I've found myself when I'm trying to be too sholet, when I'm trying to be control, when you try and be too controlling of your situation, it never works out well. But when you let go and you're loose and you're more calm and you're easygoing about it, it flows.
Hi, and welcome to the Dayna Show, where we discuss in English day-to-day life of Israeli citizens, our concerns and aspirations for the country, and everything in between. I'm your host, Dayna Kaplan, and we're so glad that you could join us. Welcome, everybody, to the Dayna Show. I'm your hostess, Dayna Kaplan, and I'm here with a special guest, Abba Horowitz, from the old country that I've known since my childhood.
Toronto.
Toronto. And we both now live in Israel. You've been working in finance for a while. And are you still working in finance?
I am.
You am?
Yes.
You am?
I am working in it, yes.
Yeah? And on the side?
It's on a side gig, yes.
Okay. And you're also doing life coaching, success
Mind
coaching.
and soul coaching.
Mind and soul coaching.
Yes.
Do you have any training in this? How did you get started?
Life training. Life training and just really studying the subject, learning from a lot of different people. It's just been a 20-year journey of pursuing truth and getting there.
Okay.
Developing these skill sets and tools for my own self that I feel I can share with others.
How long ago did you move to Israel?
About 26 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So this whole process started once you've already been in Israel for a while.
So that's a good question. I think we're always waking up to all kinds of realities and truths that we didn't see before at different stages in our lives. So I think, you're always waking up. I think one of the pivotal points in my life, I think, was when my mother died of cancer, or I would call it chemo. And it was that stage where I started to question the whole medical field and everything that they did to treat my mother.
When you were a child?
Yeah, I was 18, actually, 18 turning 19 when my mother died. And so I started to question everything. And already then I started to wonder whether this is the only path. Can we trust doctors? Can we trust the whole medical establishment? What's going on here? And it really stayed latent for a long time. I wouldn't say that I became a big advocate for natural health, but I did see a huge positive in my life when I did embrace that kind of lifestyle. Okay, I didn't know much, and that was the other thing is we didn't have the internet to research as much. You had to buy books, you had to read. Right, so it was a very different time, and that sort of fast forward. Then we come to Israel, right? So moving to Israel is also a new reality that's in for you, right? You question, well, should I stay here? It's safe to stay Toronto or wherever I was. I was in New York at the time. It's safe. You got a good job. You're making money, and you think about, okay, so I'll buy a house. I'll do this, and you've mapped out your whole life. Picking up and moving to Israel is probably the most insane thing any person can do. I think you'd agree with that, right?
Oh yeah.
But there's this pull. There's this pull that we feel inside of us that just brings us here. It's not rational, right? It's your spirit taking you. It's not your mind.
Yeah, it's definitely defies logic.
Yeah. And so that alone also is a wake-up call for you. It changes you how you think because now you're moving to the Middle East. You're moving to a place where, we've been in a war for a year. We don't need people who are listening in Chutz La'aretz, it's a very different reality that you're living in right now. And that's also a reality that we have to come to terms with. But you're a little bit insane for living here. And we are, but that's okay because we have to separate the mind and the soul. And
1 second, Abba, I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I want to circle back for a second when your mother passed away.
Yeah.
The catalyst for you going on this journey, you said, was partially because of that, right? Partially because of that. Were you unhappy with did you think there was foul play or she didn't get the right kind of treatment? Were you weary about that at the time?
So I'm going to tell you a really interesting story that happened at the time. This was in one of the Toronto hospitals, I don't remember which one, that she was in, and she was in the cancer ward. And this is in 86, I think 1986 around. And so her doctor, her oncologist, as we call him, he, they say he was the best oncologist, whatever that means. I don't even know what that means anymore. Best doctor. It's all bullshit. But okay, so, and this same guy is treating my mom is in a nurse's ward smoking cigarettes. Mm. So I couldn't understand how could someone who is an oncologist is smoking cigarettes and then treating my mother for cancer. What is he thinking? What is this guy's thinking? Now, as I said to you again, I didn't, right away, didn't have the switch in my head where I questioned everything about the medical establishment, but it certainly planted some seeds for my questioning the narrative that we were fed, okay? And, there's a great pasuk in Mishlei by Shlomo HaMelech, who's the smartest man ever to live. We don't really learn Mishlei in school either, right?
Right.
But we really should. Why shouldn't we learn wisdom of the world by the greatest, smartest man ever to live?
Yeah.
So it says, Hapeti yamin l'chol davar, that the fool believes everything. And I think what that means is that we have to really exercise a certain amount of critical thinking when we look at every circumstance and really question, is this correct? Is this true? Is this the only way? And I think that is really what started in my mind. I've always questioned, things that were considered axiomatic, right? Things that were defined, and I question those things. And I think everyone has to question everything around them, especially today after COVID and what happened in America and the whole wokeism. And you need to question everything.
Yeah.
And even your own religion. Meaning even, we both grew up the same way. You went to Eitz Chaim, right? Mm-hmm. I went to Eitz Chaim, went to the Ner Yisrael, and you went to Ulpana? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we pretty much grew up the same way.
You're super religious, huh?
Well, I started off in Or Chaim, but my parents didn't like the curriculum, so they sort of pushed me to go to Ner Yisrael.
Really?
Yes.
Do you regret it?
No, not at all. I had a great time in Ner Yisrael. I really did. It was wonderful. I did get thrown out of Ner Yisrael between 11 and 12 because I went to Mosheva that summer. So they didn't let me back in because I went to a mixed camp.
What did you do then?
I finished.
Yeah, I thought you were more B'nai Akiva.
So yeah, I'm sort of that mix, My father was a my father was a YU rabbi. So I sort of grew up more with this yeshivish leaning bent, I'll call it, okay?
Okay.
And so I went to Sir Sanford Fleming High. Do you know Sir Sanford Fleming?
My brother went there too.
Okay, there you go. So that was a real experience going from Ner Yisrael to public school.
There's a lot of people like you.
But it was like 80% Jewish.
Yes, 100%.
Even the Goyim fasted on Yom Kippur there. It's true. I had a girl in my class. She's not Jewish, but she heard everyone talking about how they all fasted, and she goes, "Yeah, I didn't eat much either on Yom Kippur." So it was like it was a very Jewish vibe. And then I went to Israel to yeshiva.
Where did you get your drive to move here? What was the incentive?
So I grew up in a home where my parents really inculcated me with a lot of this kind of, I don't know if it's Zionist thinking, but it's just a love for Israel thinking. Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't like the word.
Did you come to Israel on vacations when you were younger?
No. My first time coming to Israel was 17 and a half.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My father went a lot. My grandfather lived here, and he would visit him until he died in 73. So it was in the olden days, it was a much bigger trip to go to Israel.
For sure.
And and then we came here. And I again, like everyone who goes to Israel, there's something that pulls you here, right? You feel a certain at-homeness when you come to Israel. You feel like I belong here. And I think that's really what happened to me. And then my wife, Devorah, who's from Australia, she also felt the same way. We both felt this innately. And so at some point I was working in my career in Stamford, Connecticut, and for a hedge fund there. And there was a certain point where the division that I was in, they were closing down. And I was deciding, what do I do next? Do I go look for a new job, or do I, just move to Israel and do my own thing? And so at that point, when I told my wife that they're closing us down, she said, "Oh, that's great. We'll move to Israel." So that's really what happened.
And that was the first mention of the topic?
No, we always had talked about moving, but it had never been where now we're making that decision. Everyone says, "Yeah, I want to live in Israel," and then they keep pushing it off. They're making money, and they keep pushing off. So in this case, we actually did it.
How do you think your Judaism is different here and back in North America? Because I feel like it is, there's like you're less concerned now, maybe with what other people think, I guess, about what sect of Judaism, whether you're conservative, Orthodox, Reform, whatever it is. And here it's like, you're Jewish, you know? Like, I mean, obviously you have the difference between Haredim and Chilonim, but still, it's like, I think that because it's a Jewish state, right? It means that you don't have to work so hard to get your Oznei Haman, your Hamantashen, or your Sufganiyot, or to find a menorah. It's like, you go down the street and you can buy one. It's like, it's built in, you know? Do you feel the same way, or partially?
No, I feel completely like you. I think there's a huge difference between what we call the Gullus Jew and the Israel Jew. There's no question. The Gullus Jew is Gullus. You're still living in Gullus. So you know that your neighbors are most likely non-Jewish. When you walk on the street, it's non-Jewish. You may be working with people who are non-Jewish. You're surrounded by that. Your Judaism is more of a private thing that's not displayed, publicly displayed, right?
Well, especially now.
Especially now, exactly. While in Israel, it's the exact opposite. It's all publicized, right? So even the most Chiloni, non-religious, non-affiliated person knows everything about what's going on Purim, okay, or Hanukkah, or whatever it may be. They're sporting their Judaism, whether they like it or not, in a public way all the time. And it's completely different. The vibe is different. The air is different. Like it says that the air of Israel makes you wise, right? It's a Gemara. So, Ara de Ara Machkima, right? So,
do you know that in Negev, when my dad used to work there, they used to sell cans of Israel air?
It's a good scam.
Isn't that amazing? Reminded me of that when you said
it's
the
funny.
Israel air.
It's funny.
Maybe it's from that pasuk.
Yeah, it could be. You're right. Actually, you know what? That's actually cute. Yeah, on the surface, it's cute.
New way to make money. Let's start packaging up air.
But it's definitely different. And we're right now, if I could even say more, I feel like we are now in biblical times. That there's a difference what's going on. We are literally taking on Paras, which is one of the four nations that we need to battle. And we're literally taking on Paras. We're fighting the nations that neighbor us, whether it be Syria, which, these are all old, ancient peoples nations who are we're battling with, and we're on the Lebanon border, we're in Gaza, we're dealing with literally the enemies. We're living in this crazy time where our young boys, right, your boys, my boys, they're all fighting. They're all warriors. They're not just doing service, they're warriors.
Yeah.
So, and we've never had this before. First of all, Israel's never been at war for a year. How many Tehillim have people said? Right? How many people have done all kinds of amazing things, mitzvot and chesed, for the war effort? And it's continuing, right? We have this weird bifurcated lifestyle that's mitzad echad, we're living our regular lives. We're doing this recording, right? But mitzad sheni, there are guys fighting in Lebanon, and they're fighting still in Gaza, and there are guys training to keep going in and do more stuff. My son just told me that he got a tzav shmona, which is basically, it's a, how do we call tzav shmona in English?
It's like you're called to the service.
To do your service for the fourth time in, I think, January, February in Gaza.
Right.
So he's actually excited. So, but that's my point is it's very biblical times. We also have biblical times because what we also see is, the whole, let's say, Temple Mount thing is also exploding. And people are starting to bow down on the Temple Mount, which is something that we only, in our minds, even though it really is part of Judaism, but in our minds, it's a very biblical thing that we're seeing.
Why are people doing that?
Well, Hishtachava
I know, I understand that, but we don't have a Beit HaMikdash.
So Hishtachava is actually part of worship. It's part of our worship that we haven't been doing, but we really should be doing.
Who are they worshiping?
God. You're bowing down to God. You're essentially taking your chakras, if you want to call them your energy centers, but really you're taking your brain, your heart, And then your lower centers, which are what called your taiva centers. So it's your food, your sexual, all those kind of areas, those energy centers. And you're bowing down, you're putting them on the ground. So it's a form of what we call bittul, or nullification of yourself to God. It's like complete surrender to God through your mishtachaveh. And why it's such an important form of worship is because we know that there's actually this medrash quoted maybe 10 times in different midrashim, that it says hakol b'zchut ishtachaveh, that everything is for the zechut, the merit, or the privilege of, no, it's not, it's merit of doing ishtachaveh, of bowing down. And Avram was answered because he bowed down. Chana was answered because she was bowed down. The Jewish people in Mitzrayim were freed from Mitzrayim because they bowed down. So this is the medrash, right? So that we see Hishtachaveh has a very profound effect on the spirituality that's around you.
Where are you getting, who have you seen do this?
Oh, I've done it many times on
Where?
Temple Mount.
Really?
Yes.
And you're there with other people? You're there by yourself?
I'll even say is that, first of all, I invite anyone who's listening to this to go to the Temple Mount, but more importantly, on on Tisha B'Av. So just give you, I've been going up to Har HaBayit for 20 years, okay? And
on what kind of basis? How often?
like once a month, once every 2 months, something like that.
Is it dangerous?
Depends what you define dangerous. I don't think it's dangerous. I mean, there's always cops with us, so I don't really see army and cops always accompany.
Is there any kind of retaliation, violence?
There has been, they've tried at times, but not really, no. I mean, in my 20 years going up, there's been just a few situations, but what happens is Yassam, which is the ride police, they're there in 2 seconds. They even accompany us. They're on the Temple Mount too, waiting. So it's highly unlikely something happens ever.
Are there separate times for Muslims and for Jews?
So the Muslims pretty much can be up there when they want. The Jews can only be up there in the morning from around 7:30 till 11:30, sorry. And then once in the winter, and then once again at 12:30 to 1:30. And that's it. And not Friday nor Shabbat.
Why do you think it's like that?
Well,
we'll get back to the Hishtachaveh in a second, but why do you think it's like that?
You know, it goes back to 1967 when we captured Har HaBayit. We liberated Har HaBayit, really, because it's ours. And it's the holiest place for the Jewish people. And it's something that for 2,000 years we're always saying about L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, Reishi Yibana Beit HaMikdash. And we have all these sayings that people say all the time. And then when we actually finally got it through a real big miracle, a huge miracle, we abandoned it almost immediately. And in the Haredi world, which are essentially Jews who still have not realized that they're Bizman Geula, they're in a time of redemption, and they're still holding on to their gullus, they were actually at the forefront of actually rejecting Har HaBayit. And it's unfortunate, yeah. I mean, we can go deeper into this story, but it's essentially, it was their fault actually that the Muslims were given the keys back, the proverbial keys, back to the Temple Mount in 1967. They were the ones who went to Levi Eshkol and begged Levi Eshkol and tell them that we want nothing to do with Har HaBayit. Okay? In fact, the words were, tell the United Nations, Ein lanu chelek b'Har HaBayit. That was by Rabbi Cheskel Abramsky.
What does that mean in English?
We have no part with Har HaBayit. We have no portion in Har HaBayit. And it was a tragic point. And really that's what triggered the whole opposition of Haredim. They still stay in that Gullus mentality, unfortunately, and to this day. But however, what's happened is over the last 20 years, at least since I've been going up, is it went from, a handful of people going up on a day, maybe 3-4 people in one day, maybe 5, in 1 year it'd be maybe 1,000, maybe. Today it's about 60,000 people going up to Har HaBayit.
Oh, wow.
And what's interesting is it's actually made up of people who are not even religious, Masarati, religious, Dati Lumi, Haredi, Hasidim, all kinds of people that, again, who are truth seekers. And they understand the bigger picture of biblical Judaism, and they understand that what Judaism really means. And so they've embraced this idea of, let me go up and connect to God. The Shekhinah's still there, right? The Shekhinah.
Do you feel the Shekhinah when you go up
So it's a great question. It's because it's a little bit intense at times.
Why can't you just say yes or no? Do you feel it or not?
Do I feel the Shekhinah? Well, let's rephrase the question. Have I felt the Shekhinah up there?
Have you ever felt
At
it?
times, yes. Yes.
Wonderful.
Not every time.
Not every time.
Not every
time. Do you
time.
have to be in a specific mindset, or is it?
Definitely in a specific mindset is really important. You can be sidetracked by what's going on in Har HaBayit. There's always something going on. And so you can be sidetracked by that. But there are times where you really, like, I'll give you an example. On Tisha B'Av, 3,000 people went up to Har HaBayit on Tisha B'Av. It was pretty crazy. And what happened was, Itamar Ben-Gvir at that point had said, you can bow down, no problem. You can bow down on Har HaBayit. And until that point in time, had you bowed down on Har HaBayit, you didn't know if the police would take you off or not. Now,
I was going to ask you that.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So even though this is Am Yisrael's holiest place in the whole world, and it's ours, and Hashem wants us to build him another temple, it's, and that literally a third of all mitzvot in the Torah, of our Torah mitzvah, can only be done on Har HaBayit, can only be performed on Har HaBayit. And yet, we experience tremendous gizanut, okay, which is racism on Har HaBayit for being a Jew and really exercising your right as a Jew, freedom of religion, right? You have this idea of freedom of religion. In Hebrew, it's called zechut pulchan, right? The freedom to express yourself in any way that you want to in terms of your religious expression. And yet we're denied that on Har HaBayit. And the police, who are supposed to represent law in this country, do not represent that bichlal at all. Unfortunately, they break the law themselves. They abuse the law, and they call it nohel. Their way that they decided, klalim of the, now it's not, there's a word for chok, which is law.
So they break the law in terms of what? Allowing you to do pray?
No,
you? Or they're being very too strict and
not allowing us. I got actually. It. And they've beaten people. I've seen a lot. I myself was arrested once on Har HaBayit. And
for what?
For bowing down.
Someone came over to you, lifted you up, put handcuffs on you?
So I didn't have handcuffs. It's called atam ukav.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't have handcuffs. The guy next to me.
You're being detained.
Did have handcuffs. Why did he have handcuffs? Because he had peyot. So if someone has peyot, they actually, the gizanut, the prejudiceness, the bigotry, the racism, discrimination, it all is amplified when it comes to someone with peyot who's outwardly more like minachel looking. So yeah, we experience that. Now, I'm painting a really negative picture there, right? But mitzad sheni, let's get back to Tisha B'Av for a second, because it is what we're going through. It says Eretz Yisrael is only nikna b'yisurin. You go through hardships. You go through hardships sometimes, and I think there's also a pasuk regarding in the Torah which says l'shichno tidrashu uvatashama. You have to be doresh. Seek out his Shekhinah, and then you come there. And I think we have to go.
What's the English word for Shekhinah?
Shekhinah, presence.
Yeah, for people
God's
who don't
presence.
know what Shekhinah means.
Yeah, God's presence. You need to seek it out, and then you come there. And I think really the degesh, the emphasis should be on the word tidrishu. You need to seek it out. You need to show you want it. And so you're going to have obstacles on the way, because that demonstrates how much do you really want this. Right? And so that's why I think we go through this period. I think also if it doesn't help that certain rabbis still come out against Har HaBayit, okay? They're just doing a disservice to themselves, and they will go down in history.
What's their motivation? Because of Geula, because the Mashiach hasn't come yet, or is it because they don't want to make any kind of political stir? They don't want to, start, making the Arabs angry over there. They just want to keep it quiet. What do you think their motivation is?
Oh, I know their motivation. Their motivation is very simple. It's literally not changing the status quo of what their religious practice is. Mm-hmm. Okay, so for example, they won't wear tchelet on their tzitzit, because that's a change. Even though it's 100% proven that tchelet is the real tchelet, the real chilazon, that real Murx tranquillus, which is this, it's a, not a fish, it's a, what's it called? It's a particular...
I don't remember what it is. Is it a
snail?
snail?
Thank you.
It's
I'm
a
looking for
snail.
the word snail,
It's
yes.
a snail.
You know, when you come to Israel, you end up becoming illiterate in 2 languages.
Abba, can I tell
Okay.
you, my English has become so minimal. It's so hard for me to get the words out sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's like the more I speak Hebrew, the worse my English becomes.
Yeah.
I have to really work hard to think of words sometimes. And
Yeah.
it's frustrating to me.
Yeah.
You know, I started reading more because I really have to like enhance my vocabulary.
Yeah, it's a problem, but you're helping me because you gave me the word snails. So what's my point is? My point is that anything new, they won't embrace. Okay, so in fact, there was this rabbi who's big posek in the Haredi community. His name is Rav Shafran, and he wrote this letter, and it's actually It's actually shocking, and I can't understand it. But he actually wrote that tchelet, which is the blue color, the blue dye, right, that we have from the chilazon, that snail, is 100% correct. It is the tchelet, but we don't do it. We don't do that mitzvah because we have this inner feeling that whatever our rabbis haven't done for the last 200 years, we don't do. Now, that's ridiculous letter, which is pretty much what the Reform are saying in a different way. They don't do mitzvot because we feel this. So he's not doing a mitzvah because he feels that. Now, it'd be good if he only spoke in his own name, not everyone else's names, about the tchelet. But that gives you a sense of the approach that they're taking, right? They don't want anything different. They want to dress the way they dressed in Europe. They don't want to change one iota. In fact, it's worse. Because in my days, when I went to Ner Yisrael, you could wear a blue hat, you could wear a brown hat, and you could wear all kinds of shirts, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And all kinds of shirts and whatever it was. And yeah, you had to wear a hat and jacket, but it didn't really matter that much. And now it's just you have to wear a white shirt. That's all you're allowed to wear. And black suit, white shirt. And what are you doing? What you're doing is you're creating a certain way of conforming that everyone's the same. Now, when everyone is the same, the unfortunate outcome of that is there's no creativity. There's no critical thinking. There's no new ideas.
Yeah, and just like in a marriage, I've heard from people the most successful marriages are two people who are different and who complement each other and who are independent. And even though they have a lot of things in common, they're still able to have the freedom to express their individuality. And I think that only enhances instead of deterring.
For sure. Well, let me ask you, are you the same person you were at 25?
Absolutely not.
Right, so...
But I also wasn't the same person I was yesterday.
Fine. That's all good because everyone's always changing.
Yeah.
So you can't expect people to conform to a certain model that you've decided on. It just doesn't work. It suppresses all creativity. It suppresses individuality. It suppresses literally just being part of this world. And so my point is like this, is that now you go to Har HaBayit and you wonder to yourself, why are they against Har HaBayit? And they make up things. They make up all kinds of things, which are all lies. And unfortunately, I say this with a strong position here because I've been involved in this for 20 years. But, they'll say is that if you go up to Har HaBayit, you're going to piss off the Arabs.
That's what I said, yeah.
Hello, October 7th? We had October 7th. What do you mean piss off the Arabs? Everything we do, we piss off the Arabs. And you know what? It's our land. It's our land. We need to take out these Arabs, not let them piss us off. We need to get rid of them. God told us to get rid of them. God in the Bible says, get rid of these Arabs. He goes, if you don't get rid of them, if you don't get rid of them, they're going to be like thorns in your eyes. And they really are thorns in our eyes. And we have to, and instead of rabbis who are living in their own gullahs and who don't do the army, by the way, right? So none of them are doing the army. They have the audacity to tell me, who's going up to Har HaBayit, that if I go up there, I'm going to piss off the Arabs.
I think that the last 200 years, the leaders that we've had, the Rabbanim that we've had, and their obsession with holding on to tradition and to these older methods of doing things has only been to our detriment. It has only made us suffer more. Meaning, like the last guest I had, he's very involved in like Jewish identity and narrative, and he said like if we would have had a stronger voice, positive voice, if the leaders that we had, and I don't know if he meant Rabbanim, but for religious people, that's who they look up to, then October 7th wouldn't have happened, or we would have been more prepared for afterwards. And like, you know, when the Holocaust happened also, I talk about the Holocaust a lot, but like, there wasn't a loud Jewish voice. There wasn't a lot of resistance. The Rabbanim were like, yeah, everything's gonna pass, don't do anything, don't leave, don't. They're so afraid to move forward that they're actually putting the Jewish people in danger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see that as well?
I definitely agree with that. I think what we have to understand today is that Judaism right now is going through a transformation. We're on a path, a biblical path, that's going to change. Israel's not going to be the same. Our kids aren't going to be the same anymore, right? They think differently. After what they've gone through, they think very differently. You can't compare a kid in Israel today to a kid in Chutz La'aretz. They're just, it's day and night. There's nothing that is similar between the two.
Yeah.
And you know, it's interesting, there's this Mishnah in the end of Masechet Sota, and it's all about the time of Geula, the time of redemption. And one of the things it says is that Ha'emet ne'aderet, the truth will be fleeting. It'll be like, you won't know where the truth, won't know what truth is, and you won't exactly, where is this truth? And it goes through a couple other things also, that the rabbis will be like a Beit Znut, which is not a positive thing either. We won't get into that.
What is Beit Znut in English for people who don't speak
A
Hebrew?
house of harlotry.
A whorehouse, yeah.
Okay. And but I think the key to that Mishnah, for me at least, was that we have to come to this final conclusion. We only can rely on our Father in heaven, which I thought was a very endearing way of, describing God, in that He's our Father in heaven. He takes care of us. But I think to the point of what I'm saying over here is people are waking up, and they're, especially to the youth, they're not embracing the Judaism of the last 200 years. They want more. They see the Judaism that their parents are practicing, and they go, that's not me. And the shaming and the guilt and all that, it doesn't work on them. It just doesn't work.
It doesn't. Why did it work on us so well?
I'll explain to you in a second, okay?
Good point.
Okay,
Abba, good point.
Thank you. The shaming and the guilt, it just doesn't work. If I could just say, I met a kid from Ner Yisrael this past Shabbat. He was in Beit Zayit, where I live. And so I just wanted to hear what it's like, okay? Who are the rabbis? And I just want to have an update of from 35 years ago, okay? So, and he told me this crazy story where his rabbi told him that if he doesn't wear his hat in davening, he may as well not daven because his tefillah will not be accepted by God, okay? And so that gives you an idea. Now, he told me that 4 out of the 30 kids in his class already are not frum. It's not a shocker, right? Because this kind of Christian guilt approach is not Jewish, right? God is not a God of retribution. God is a God of love. So it doesn't work. What's happened is we grew up in a period of years.
Why are they afraid to say that God will accept you even if you don't do this? Why are they so...
They're not afraid. They've been trained the same way. They've been conditioned the same way. They've been brainwashed the same way. It's just gotten more extreme. So I don't know if in my days I would have heard that from one of my rabbeim, but it just got a lot more extreme, right? When you're in this real conformist kind of group of people, and I don't want to use the word cult, but if you understand the definition of the word cult, you'll start to understand that in order not to be in a cult, you have to have real independent thinking. And it's not just, I'm talking about those people being in a cult. Kippas Rugal also, many people can be considered in a cult when they follow a certain pathway and they can't see beyond it and they can't question it, right?
And when they start making decisions that are outside of logic, and
exactly.
It's against what they really feel inside.
Exactly. So I think what is it? Now, before I say any of this, they're all my brothers. They're all neshamas. So we have to understand
All
that
souls.
they're all souls. They're all piece of God in them. So we have to understand that. We don't puzzle all these people and hate them. That's not what I'm talking about here. But it's a matter of seeing the reality of it for what it is. And I think, there's this beautiful, I think I mentioned this last time I saw you, but there's this beautiful Orach Chaim HaKadosh in Parshat Shoftim, where he says that the time of redemption, we're going to switch from a Judaism of yira, fear, to a Judaism of love. And I think that's the transition that we're actually seeing ourselves going through. I think the youth are not part of the yira. They're part of the love. They want the love. They're looking for love.
They're not part of the yira era.
Yes, exactly. Yafeh. Good one. So I think that's what's going on. And I think you see it too. People are searching. There's so many people searching, want more now. They're searching for more spirituality. They're searching for connectedness. I read this unbelievable thing in a book where it just made me think for a long time, still thinking about it, where the guy said most rabbis have never had a spiritual experience. Let that sink in for a second. Most rabbis have likely not had ever a spiritual experience in their life.
And you would think that's why they became a rabbi.
Right?
Is because they wanted to share that experience or that feeling with other people and then try to get them to achieve it.
But think about what spiritual experience could they be having? Right? What experience are they going through? At what point are they dedicating time to have that spiritual experience? Right? Today, it's so revolved around...
What do you mean? They've never had the experience before they became a rabbi or
at all?
At all?
At all. Have you had spiritual experience in your life?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say a lot of spiritual experiences?
No.
Or a handful?
Handful.
Yafeh. Okay, so that's the point. Just because you're learning Torah and just because you're learning halacha doesn't mean you're having a spiritual experience.
Okay.
And you have to allow that spiritual experience in. Remember, a lot of Torah can be ego-driven. A lot of stuff can be ego-driven. So you have to be very careful when you're a well-known religious person is how to know who you are, right? And I'll even say more. It says Moshe was anav mikol adam, right? You know that famous pasuk at the end of the Torah?
He was very humble.
No, see, that's the thing. Humble's not the right word. What the hell does that mean, humble?
He didn't have an ego.
Yafeh. That's the better explanation. Right. He didn't have ego. Moshe was, the ego is what traps us, keeps us a hold on us. Moshe didn't have that ego. So that's why he was on this higher level. Imagine not having an ego. It's a hard thing to understand because everything, we're almost fueled by our ego on a certain level. And we have to learn how to separate our ego from our real self.
100%.
Right. So a lot of Torah today, unfortunately, is being driven a lot by egos. Especially when you call other people names and you put down other people and you attack people and you see rabbis are angry. That's ego-driven. So you have to be very careful. As I mentioned to you, one of the people I felt in my life that I was exposed to at least, that I thought was really a transcendent individual was actually Rav Adin Steinsaltz. Okay? Because you didn't see him ever act that way. He always was pleasant. He was always smiling. He had this just air about him. When you were around him, you felt something, lightness, when you were around that person. And we need to, I think that the young people are searching for something like that. They're searching for someone, whether it be Adin Steinsaltz or Shlomo Karlebach. These are people that brought so much spirituality to Am Yisrael.
I think that when the way that we were raised in our education, it was that you have Judaism and you have to fit to the rules of Judaism. And I think
people now in this generation are like, we are who we are, and we have to fit Judaism to fit who we are, not the other way around.
Okay, that's an interesting point. I'd have to think about that.
Because I think that the fact that the old timers or the people, that the people who have been around for a long time, their agenda is to keep things the way it's always been.
Yeah.
And that, like, Yiddishkeit, Judaism is one way, and you have to conform to the way that is. If you want to be a real Jew, then you have to dress so-and-so, you have to eat only so-and-so, you have, and there's very strict rules, and that doesn't work. That pushes people away. Because if you can't conform to that, then what is that? You're not a Jew. Like you said, the kid said, if you don't wear a hat, then you're not fulfilling
Yeah.
the mitzvah.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you want people to be closer to God, or if people want to become closer to God, then you have to make Judaism fit your life, the person that you are, right? And I feel the same way actually about Israel too. It's like, when people say to me, they give me the excuse that you don't want to move here because it's a different mentality, and the people are different, and I'm going to miss all of my, whatever it is. And I say, if Israel is the Jewish homeland, then every Jew has a part here. No matter what your customs are, no matter what things you're strict about or not strict about, everybody's welcome. Practice the kind of Judaism or whatever religion, but the Judaism that you want to here, and you'll be accepted the way that you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
100%. I even though I'll put it in a different context, in the time of the Second Temple and First Temple, the Torah says that everyone had to be ola l'regel. And that even included the Amaratzim. The Amaratzim were people who didn't know any of the halachot of Tumatara, and they probably weren't very religious. And yet God wanted them to come too. And not only did God want them to come, but the Chachamim made certain takanot, enactments, to say that in Jerusalem there's no tumah. Despite not being able to know whether these Amaratzim, as we'll call them, like the ignorant people, the people who just don't know what's going on, the Amaretz really means the person of the land. He's just like a regular guy, and he's not learned at all. And yet they enacted that there's no tumah, there's no spiritual, for lack of a better word, uncleanliness, even though I don't like that word, but none of that exists in Jerusalem during the time of Chag. So they did away with tumah. It's a wild concept. Why? Because God wanted kol zechorcha. He wanted everyone to be there on the Temple Mount. He wants everyone to be there. And that means Am Yisrael is one. We're all connected, right? In fact, the whole world's connected, really. And really, if you go really deeper, everything is one. Because everything came from God. If everything is born out of God, then everything is really one, right? So the idea of Hashem Echad is really, you take it literally. I mean, everything, the essence and the source of all is really God. So, and Am Yisrael is this one piece of that neshama put together, so we are one. Now, having said all that, I do believe that certain people today have a calling to come to Israel and some don't. So I think they're just people who just don't feel this need to live in Israel today. They just don't. And I think guilting them or embarrassing them is not going to help, and probably does the opposite, right? Because they have to defend their position. And let's be honest, it's not simple to live here. We all have challenges wherever we live. It's not simple to live here, and I can really understand how it could be very unsettling for some people to live in Israel if they're more sensitive to certain things. Let's be honest. And I sort of, on a deeper level, I sort of feel like we all are Gilgul neshamas. We have like our neshama keeps coming back into this world until it does something correctly or until it stops coming back. I don't know how that all works, and it could very well be that we've lived here before. And that's what's pulled us here. In the Second Temple, when Ezra went up to build the Second Temple, it says in Ezra, it says that only 42,000 people came with him. Where was everybody else? They stayed in Bavel. They were doing business. It was good life. They didn't rush to come back to Israel. Even the Kohanim didn't come back. So you see, it's not simple to say everyone's going to live here. And you know what? I don't want people to have to come here because it's so bad in the world.
What would be the worst thing if people didn't come here?
Would it be-
Why should they have to come here?
Again, I think it's your soul pulling you. I think it's
Yeah, but what if
spirit.
it doesn't? What if you're the type of Jew that it doesn't pull you?
So that's just the way it is, you know? I mean, Jews live
Listen, it's a mitzvah to live in Israel, right? It's a commandment, a positive commandment
Correct.
to live here. But there are a lot of positive commandments, and I'm
Yeah.
sure you don't, and I don't keep them all either. So if that's the only one that they're not keeping, then
I'm not going to judge people because I think judging people, I
can't.
judge myself.
You can't.
And I don't want to do that.
you know
right?
when I first made Aliyah, I was extremely Zionistic, extremely, and I was also like people from back home. I was like, I didn't want to hear their excuses. I kept, and after a few years, like I obviously realized that it was extremely hard to live here. But what was interesting is that I had a madrich, an instructor from Bnei Akiva. He was in Moshava with me. He was even in my shul, in my synagogue. He was so Zionistic, and he moved to Israel with his family a couple of years before me. When I moved here a year after, he left. He moved back, and I was in shock. And I was like, how could that happen? I'm like, he was like always walking around with a flag, and he was like, also just trying to convince people to come all the time. And he left, and then it hit me. It's like, you don't have to live here. It might not be for everybody. It just might not be for everybody.
It's clearly not, right?
Yeah,
it's clearly
but
not.
I also feel that if more, maybe you'll disagree with me, but if more people from other countries would come, then it would be saturated, the country would be saturated from cultures from other places as well. I think that the Israeli culture, or the way things have been here for the last 20, 30 years, maybe there's hope that could change as well. It would have an influence from North America or wherever. It could change.
Absolutely. There's nothing. I'm not one of those people. A lot of people are very negative. No, it's just the way it is. It's corrupt and it's finished. I don't believe that at all for 1 second. And I think that we as ourselves, we can actually change that. Even just thinking of change can cause change. We've seen actually the French who have come have brought all their delicacies and foods and culture and dress, which is actually added a huge flavor to Israel, right? Especially you go to Netanya, and you see what's going on over there.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a positive. Italian Jews have come, and certainly, and even American Jews, and to a small degree Canadian Jews have had that influence on Israel, but maybe not enough yet. Not certainly we could really use a revamp of the system here, a revamp of the whole way the government works, the corruption, there's a lot to improve, which is really good because it means we're not there yet. And
it's a new country.
Yeah. It's a new country that unfortunately was built on, at the time, was built on socialist/communist ideals that were sort of incorporated in a large part of the country. And even with that same mentality and whatever, but, once again, I feel this new generation, I don't know if you feel the same thing, your kids' generation, I feel they're just going to change everything here. I'm really looking forward for them running this country because they're going to be they're warriors. They've gone through different kinds of experiences. They've seen different things.
So much more experience than we did.
Yeah. But they're still chillers. There's still this concept of them wanting to just chill out and relax. And, there's this culture that they have, whether it be these forest parties that they do or whatever it is that people do. They have the zulas that everyone builds today, this idea of sitting back and just taking a break from life and enjoying yourself is something that you see it in this generation that you didn't see it in previous generations.
They found a balance.
Yeah.
Wait, so you were going to say before why we were, our education was built more on, or our our faith was built more on yira than on ahava.
So first of all, a lot of the
fear than
teachers, especially in Eitz Chaim where we went to, they were either Holocaust survivors or children of Holocaust survivors, one of the two. And I mean, I remember having one rabbi in Eitz Chaim, he was from Russia. He was a Chabadnik from Russia who had been in the Russian army. So you're getting a whole kind of shtetl Judaism that they were inculcated with and brought up with, and you don't talk back and get a slap in your face if you do, and if you don't daven or you don't learn, you get a slap in your face, right? I don't know, did you get the belt as a kid? Probably not, right?
I got other things.
Okay, so my father hit me a couple times with a belt. My father was a sweet guy, but that was just like what they did. If you really acted up, you got a belt. And
On your tush?
yeah, it stopped working because my brother and I started to laugh every time he did it, so it stopped working. But the fact that that was even an option is insanity. But so it's a different time. It was this time where our own parents and grandparents, for certain, they were so asleep. They were so asleep. They were not connected. They didn't see beyond they didn't question anything they were doing or thinking or said. Whatever came out of their mouths was, that's it, that's the way it goes, and listen to your father, listen to your whatever, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, before the Holocaust, I don't know about your family, but before, my grandmother was living in a shtetl. Like, she didn't have a book. She didn't know anything about what was going on in the outside world. So
Right.
whatever she learned was from what her parents taught her. I mean, I don't even think women went to cheder at that time, at that period. So she had no education. She had no education on parental education, on how to raise your kids. And after the Holocaust, forget about it. They were just so messed up. They couldn't see that far. They had no threshold for kids acting up and how to discipline properly. They had no idea.
No, they had literally no idea. They've never read, they've never been trained in most things that kids do, even today. A lot of things that I saw as a parent in the beginning were just things that I had experienced and grown up with and watched and observed my parents. So I incorporated that in my own life. Maybe not to the same degree, you know what I mean? But you did until you catch yourself and you say, hey, what am I doing? This is wrong. The problem with that is that it means that you're suddenly seeing your parents as human beings, and that, hey, my parents weren't right about stuff, right? And then that opens that Pandora's box in a good way, because then you start to say, hey, well, what's right? Okay, my parents, they did the best they could with the knowledge that they had, but it's not the right thing for me to do today. And so you need a switch. You need to figure out, what should I be doing? And question it. And that leads to other questions. And that leads to other questions in life, right? And that really, at every stage, right, every decade, we open up differently. We see things differently. Some people are always closed. They're always asleep. They never awaken at all. But for most people, I think everyone on a certain degree is changing a little bit each decade. They learn more. And especially now, when you go into your 40s, there's people in Beit Zayed who are in their 40s, and I don't think they realize what's ahead for them, because that's the age, the 40s.
Why should they?
No, it's okay. It's okay.
The
They'll go through it.
future.
Yeah. But they're all, I often say to my wife, the 40 to the 50s is really where you start to go in one of two directions. Either you go more inside yourself and just become a more extreme version of what you were, or you actually start to open up and embrace new ideas, new thought processes. You start to think about things on a more critical level. Is this right? Is this wrong? And feel more independent in how you can approach things without feeling bogged down by history and what you used to do. Do you know what I'm saying?
100%.
So, and that's really important. I think in Israel now, where we are, this has to be an eye-opener for most people. You can't go back to the way things were before the war. This has to change people. People have to open up their eyes and question, what brought this on? How did this occur? Where am I in this? What is my obligation? What should I be doing? What should I be part of? What do I need to learn from this? I think these are very important ideas that Am Yisrael as a whole needs to redefine itself now. We can't just be the same people going along and voting for Bibi and hating Bibi, or you know what I mean? It just can't be that way. It has to be. There's a change here.
I agree there should be a change, but I think there's a fundamental way things work in Judaism. I think especially because, in Gemara, where it's always like a controversy and you're having this discussion, this conflict, I don't think there'll ever be a time when everyone will be on the same page with everything in Judaism, especially in Israel. But I think it's a good thing as well.
I agree.
Look, I obviously want everyone to be united and to have open conversations and no violence or anything like that. But on the other hand, like we said before, everybody is different. Everyone's an individual. Everybody has different ideas and different ways of doing things. I think if we're looking at change, then it has to be this huge umbrella that expands wider to include more people instead of being more specific on what things we have to do to be called a Jew or a good Jew. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. There's a saying, Shivim Panim LeTorah.
Yes.
So what is it?
70 faces to the Torah.
What does that mean, right? What do you mean 70 faces? So people go, there's 70 different ways of interpretation. But I think if you just take it at face value, not to use the pan of faces here, but Shivim Panim LeTorah is 70 different personalities when it comes to Torah. And again, the word 70 is not miduyak, it's not precise. It just means there's a lot of different ways of approaching it. And I think if you're a person who is OCD, your approach to Judaism may be one way. If you're a guy who's a free spirit, your approach to Judaism will be another way. That's your personality. You can't get everyone in a box and be the same. That's clear. There's certain, we all can approach our mitzvah differently. Some people are very, approach the mitzvah by being very medakdek about every little detail of that mitzvah, and the other person will just feel this incredible spirituality and spiritual experience from actually performing the mitzvah. There's going to be different approaches, different ways with people, and the key to that is, right, that we're all one. So I don't believe that everyone has to do the same. It's just not natural. It actually not the way God created us. And it's also how you grew up, right? Your home you grew up, if you're rich or poor, if you're smart or not, or your personality is whatever your personality may be, is the way that you're going to approach Judaism by default because of who you are. And that's really important. So going back to the concept of judging. So why often, first of all, judging someone comes from ego. It's pure ego. Because when you judge someone, you say, oh, look at him. He's not a good person. Or he's not, he's let's even take it on just a regular case. He's Mechalel Shabbos, okay? So
he doesn't keep Shabbat.
Exactly. And you're saying, look at him, he's just, chiloni like that. And you throw your hands out. Where that comment stems from your ego. It's essentially making you feel good about yourself. Oh, I keep Shabbos. I'm a good Jew. God loves me. But that guy, no, he's garbage, right? So when you understand that concept of judging another person, it's actually bringing you down inside on a deeper level because you're going to a really negative place inside that you need some sort of verification or validation for your own self by putting this other person down. That's pretty low.
Yeah.
So when you have to flip that and you have to see someone who's doing that and you say, I'm sending him love. And not only that, if he understood the value of Shabbat, he would probably want to keep it. I would love to somehow help this person keep Shabbat, but in the meantime, I'll send them love and never at any point judge them because they'll just bring you down.
Why do you want him to keep Shabbat?
Not for me and not for God, but because the way one should be approaching mitzvot, or the way you approach mitzvot, it's not, in other words, there's no other explanation for it. God doesn't need us to do any of his commandments. He's the omnipotent, the omnipresence, the omnipotent, he's the master of the world. What does he need me to do as mitzvot? It doesn't do anything, okay? I mean, clearly it creates energies, but it doesn't do anything. So the only reason that we do mitzvot, why did Hashem say, go do this? Because he loves us. It's coming from a place of love. Do this, and you will raise your spiritual vibration. Do this, and it's just good for you. Okay, it's going to be just a positive thing for you. And by the way, it's not my idea. I mean, if you read Sefer Chinuch, which was written in the 1300s, which is about all the mitzvot, that's actually his entire approach the whole time in the book. Okay, it's actually a very beautiful book to read about mitzvot because it's so positive. And the way he approaches it on such a positive level. He's always saying, B'nai Akar, my dear son. He's obviously addressing it to more of the males, not the females, but it's across the board that you need to approach that. So if God is giving a mitzvah for love, it means he says it's good for you. If it's good for me, and God is telling me it's good for me, shouldn't I listen to God? So when I see that person, I say, clearly, if he were to keep Shabbat, it would have this positive impact on him on obviously a spiritual level, but possibly even on a physical level because of where his mind is. And and that's why I'd be sending him that love.
What do you think? I know this is going to sound crazy.
Yeah.
But you're used to it already from me, I guess. About the people who stand on the tzmatim, on the big junctions on the highways, and hand out leaflets about religion.
What are you referring to?
Like you said that the reason that you want people to, let's say, keep Shabbat is because it would enhance their spiritual vibration, and if God wants them to do it, then it obviously means that it would be good for them to do it. So you want them to do it so that it would be good for them. What's the difference between that and someone who's standing on a corner and saying you should, giving out a sefer about how to become a better Jew and whatever? Do you think those people, their intention is to raise people's spiritual vibration?
I have no idea what their intention is. Okay. I think religion is a delicate subject, specifically in Israel. So you have to approach it in that way. You have to be very careful when you speak to people about religion. They have preconceived ideas. They're very insecure about it, and they're very defensive. Mm-hmm. Right? You've seen them. I've had them many times. When I first came to Israel, I remember saying to my business partner at the time, I think I can make peace between the religious and non-religious because, I've come from New York and I deal with non-Jews and I get along with them really well and non-religious Jews. And then I come to Israel and the reality hits and you start to understand, wow, this is really deeply embedded in people. They're not open to it. And from a point where they get angry at you, they'll put you down, they'll scream at you, kfiyah datit, where you're forcing people to do things that are religious. So these were concepts, when you, in Canada, right, when you grew up. So let's say you had a non-Jew come to shul, he'd put on a kippah, right? Or someone non-religious came to your house and they're sitting around the Shabbat table. They put on a kippah, it's not even a question, right? There was just this basic respect that they all had. And then you come to Israel and it's the complete opposite. Yeah. Okay, so it's not so simple when it comes to the non-religious Jews. Here in Israel, what we call chilonim, which I also don't like either, because you have datim and chilonim. It just sort of puts everyone in a place. In America or Canada, we don't have that. You're just called a Jew. Right?
Yeah, but you have conservative and Reform and Orthodox.
Yeah, but that's only in the circles that we judge people. But really, it's us against the goyim generally, right? So it's he's a Jew. He's my brother because he's a Jew. You don't feel that as much here, although with the army and everything with the army, you feel that more now, right? That everyone's your brother. So you have to, listen, there's a lot of trauma in this country, right?
Yeah, everyone here has PTSD. Everybody.
Everybody has PTSD. And, the Kaplanistim who scream, I don't know how they do this years now, they're screaming, right? On the Ayalon highway. And these people, on a certain level, they're crazy. I mean, you're just wasting your life. I mean, go to a nice movie, go to a show, go out to eat with your wife. What are you doing screaming the whole time? And also, it doesn't even work. It doesn't help. So what are you doing? But
it must give them something.
But think about it. Think about how negative these people are. They go out literally almost every day, these people, right? Actually, a couple times a week, I think it is now. So they go out and they just want hate. It's hate, 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 hate. And they bring that hatred home with them. So imagine what their family life is like. How pleasant can your life be And I feel for them. You know, you have, as someone asked me, I go, you have two sides. You have the Kaplanistim, and then you have what's called the Plaga Yerushalmi, which are the extreme group of the Haredim that also protest and are blocking roads and all that kind of stuff. And you really have on those two ends these people that are just really angry and really unhappy. And you can't imagine, their households must be terrible. I can't even imagine what it's like to live with these people who all day are probably talking about these issues. And they don't have any point of reprieve. There's no harmony. There's no peaceful
They're totally
existence.
immersed in negativity.
Yeah. And imagine what that toll it takes on you. It takes on you in all aspects of your life. I wouldn't be surprised if some of them are physically ill because of it, because that's what it does to you.
Well, you know what? The other day I had a conversation. This wasn't actually about what's going on in Israel. This is after Trump won the election. And I was speaking to an individual who is American and Israeli, but really hates Trump. And he started yelling at me, and his face turned bright red.
Right.
And I was like, listen, this conversation's gonna have to end because you look like you're gonna have a heart attack. No, I'm not kidding. Like, he was like this, he was shaking, and about how he was talking about Trump, and I'm like, why? Why are you getting yourself all worked up about Trump, about something that is like so outside of your, anything that has to do with your life, you know, with your daily life or whatever. But, and even if you're in politics, or you have to put up a boundary, you have to put things into perspective.
Yeah.
Right? The people that get really passionate about politics, it's not healthy. Like, remember we talked about my dad? That's probably one of the reasons that he died, was because he was just so immersed in what was going on in Gush Katif, and that the pain that he felt from the disengagement just broke him in half.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
You have to learn how to separate. You have to separate what is, you know, there's this concept where you don't give any of your own power to anything outside of you. So in other words, it shouldn't be really, whether you like Trump or you hate Trump, it shouldn't make a difference if Trump gets in to your own existence, to your own being, to your own happiness. It should have none of that, because the minute you give your power to something else, then that takes over. But if you don't give that power and you go inward, as we call it, right? You're going inward, you're going into your connection to the godliness inside of you, nothing in theory should impact you ever, regardless of what happens. And I guarantee you with this guy, I don't know him, I don't want to know him, I don't want to know his name, but I guarantee you that really his life will not change one iota from Trump being in. Okay? But somehow he has allowed these perceptions to take over and rule him almost, to the extent that, think about what kind of place he's in. He's in a bad place. Okay? I can't imagine he's a pleasant person to be at home, to live with, right? And that takes over. And then what's going on here? Because of Trump, who doesn't know him, will never know this guy, doesn't care about this guy, gets in. This guy has now ruined his life because of Trump. That's insanity.
It's so stupid.
It's beyond insanity that you do this. And unfortunately, a lot of Israelis are susceptible to this. We see Israelis all the time getting angry, screaming and about some politician who doesn't care about you, who your life is not that much changed, whether he is this or that. It doesn't matter. But you're hating people. You're hating your brothers. You can't be with people because you hate. And what does that do?
It just surrounds your life with negativity.
Exactly.
And brings everything down.
Yeah. And we have to learn. I think one of the lessons we need to take from this war is, you know, the old 60s saying, make love, not war. And I think that's really true. I think we have to learn how to love each other and stop hating, you know?
Yeah. It would be a refreshing change.
Yeah.
You know? That's one of the reasons I invited you to come today, because you have a very nice, unique perspective on healing, and you help people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you talk to me a little bit about that? Because I like your approach.
I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not an approach. I think it's just truth. I think when we understand who we are as people, we have the ego on the one hand, but we also have our higher self, our spiritual side, which is the godly part of us. And we need to connect to the godly part and not to the ego. Your ego is not your friend. Your ego is what puts you in a funk. It likes problems. It takes you down. You think the ego is helping you, but really it's only a survival mechanism.
What do you mean by that, with your ego's in control? Like, what kind of voices would you have, or what kind of actions would you do if your ego was in control? And what kind of actions would you do if it was it was coming from a more godly place?
Very simple. I mean, you think about it, you're with people, and sometimes you're with a person and you feel they rub you the wrong way, and you'll start to have these thoughts about that person, and you say, oh, the guy's a schmuck, or he's an idiot, or whatever it is that you would say. And I've been there, so that's why I know what I'm talking about. But you realize at some point, whoa, where's that coming from? You have to ask yourself a question. Why am I saying this? Why am I reacting to this person? Oh, he's a schmuck, or he's just a, not nice guy. Whatever it is that you say about a person, why am I saying this about him, right? And even if the guy on an objective level is not a great person, but me thinking those thoughts bring negativity inside of me, and it just reduces me down to a non-godly person. It takes away my godliness, essentially. We're all divine. We're all divine beings. And it's something that you have to realize. We're not taught in school this, but we're all taught, oh, you guys all have a neshama, but we're not taught how to use that neshama, how to connect to that neshama, what to do with that neshama that we all have. And we should. And we should be taught that. And so my journey was actually the real eye-opener, as I said to you, not this discussion, last time we spoke, was Gush Kativ, because I had a lot of anger from Gush Kativ. And I probably wasn't a very pleasant person to be around after Gush Kativ, because I had so much hate inside of me. And it says, Al tisna achicha b'levavavecha, don't hate your brother in your heart. That's a good sign where hatred comes from. It comes from inside, right? So I'm feeling it inside, the hatred. So it brings you down. And it was...
So you're talking about specifically the Israeli army for taking the government?
Yeah, the government, the army, the police, the people. It's just... And what happened was, I saw it had an effect on my outside life, being in this place. Because when you're in that space, you're not open to all the good things around you because you're in this negative space. Mm-hmm. So the law of attraction is real. It's just maybe not explained as it should be explained. It just means is when you're in this pall, this fog of negativity, what it means is your mind's not working the best way it could be working in order to find new, beautiful ideas to connect to. You're sort of outside of that world. You put yourself outside of the good world and you're only in the negative space world. And so it was a learning process for me to understand that, because I generally am an optimistic person and I'm usually forward-looking kind of person. And this brought me down and I had to get out of that. And
what was the breaking point for you to realize that you had to get out of that? Like, how were you?
I was getting into a lot of fights with different people. Mm-hmm. Verbal fights, not physical fights. Just verbal fights.
Specifically about this situation?
No,
or about
just other things too.
You were just hostile in general.
I was probably, as I said to you, I was probably not a pleasant person to be with. When I wasn't there with my family, it was maybe different. But even there, I imagined that I was probably not the most pleasant person. So I understood. One thing I guess I'm lucky is that I often go inside, do self-introspection and try and look at things. It takes time, but you do it. And I started to research. I started to read a lot, sort of new age kind of stuff to understand this better, because there's really nothing out there that addresses these issues.
Like what? Was it all like Torah-based things?
No.
Bible, or it was secular?
So I started off with like Torah stuff, but it just wasn't, doing it. There is a beautiful book by Shara Bitachon, by the Chovat HaLevavot, Rav Bachya, Ibn Pakuda is his name. He was from the around 1100s, 1200s. That I highly recommend to anyone to read if they can read it in English. That is probably one of the best books of the Hebrew side, but I didn't get to that initially. I didn't read that initially. That came to me much later. I read, some books like Mesilat Yesharim and stuff to get there. I read some different books, but it wasn't addressing the main issues of how your mind works, how you should treat your mind, a more overview of how to be. How should one be on a daily basis? And also, there were no books on meditation. except for Rav Aryeh Kaplan, who's one of my greatest teachers. If he's incredible on that level, what he wrote, and really brought it to the forefront of Judaism, which no one else has done, actually since even. You don't have books like that teach you how to meditate, go in. Now, he did that more on a Kabbalistic level, and so it's not for everybody, the Kabbalistic side. You know,
So what was Aryeh Kaplan's books?
I would say Aryeh Kaplan I knew the existence of meditation from Aryeh Kaplan going inward. So that I would say started off. But the most influential book on my life was actually not a Jewish book. It was actually written by a Reformed Protestant reverend whose name was Norman Vincent Peale. And it was called The Power of Positive Thinking. Okay? And you just, again, he does quote Po V'Sham Jesus, but you need to just get over that. In other words, it's almost sometimes in the book, because he's a Reformed Protestant, he's not really that connected. He's as far away from the Catholic Church as possible. So, and most of I wouldn't say most, but like probably at least a good half, if not more, of the psukim he quotes are actually from our Bible, okay? So, but his ideas are universal ideas. And his idea of how you need to, where you need to get your mind to, how you need to think, and what to do with all the negative thoughts. And then the negative thought, and that thoughts in general are not real. What you think is not real. So if a person sees a situation and he says, oh my God, this is terrible. So two things. He's decided that moment that it's terrible. And by him actually expressing that with speech, he's making it even worse. Okay? You need to learn that. You need to learn how to use and maneuver and navigate with your brain, and also how to use your speech for your advantage, not for your disadvantage. Mm-hmm. We've been conditioned by our parents and Holocaust survivors and everything, and our 2,000 years of gullus, of pogroms and you name it, that everything is negative, painted negatively. Oh, we're definitely going to get killed. We're definitely going to get hurt. We're definitely going to get raped. So we need to understand that's not the right way to think. That's not the way the brain should be thinking. And the brain is a very powerful tool, and so is the speech. That's what makes us godly, actually. That's our divinity. Our divinity is our mind and our speech. And people don't, God created the world, right? It says, Vayomer Elokim. God said, Yehi Or. He could have just made the world. We're seeing that speech is a very powerful creative tool, and you better use it for your advantage, not your disadvantage. And the mind too, how you think is what's going to determine your life. And we talk about this idea of Job in Eov, Perek Gimel, Pasuk Chav Dalet. Look it up. As my father would always say, look it up. Anyway, it says, Pachad pachariti v'yetayeni v'asher yagarti v'yavo li, which means that which I feared happened to me. So the fear is internal. The fear is over here in your brain, right? And what happened to Job, for those that don't know, Job was extremely rich. He had a big family, and he was very healthy. And what happened was that he ended up losing all his family. He lost all his money, and his body was filled with boils, shkin. And he says there, he was trying to understand what happened to him. He goes, Pachad, that which I feared happened to me. In other words, he caused his own reality by his own thinking that this may happen, right? And I can say that I've had that my own experience in life on the negative side too. When you think you're going to lose something, or, I play the stock market too. So often when you have these negative thoughts, yeah, that's the reality that happens. But you got to flip it. And that's the key to life, flipping it to saying, well, if I think good thoughts, and if I use my imagination, which is this incredible tool we've been blessed with, right? This divine tool, and use it to see only amazing situations in my life and filter out everything else, then I'm reshaping my life to have a new reality that's amazing reality for me. And shouldn't I be doing that? And any other way would be insanity. So that's I think the crux of how you would see that.
When something happens and your original inclination would be to have a negative thought, it automatically goes to something positive. Let's say someone cuts you off right? Instead of being like, that asshole or whatever, you're like, well, he must be having a bad day, or not even that way. You'd be like, wow, he must be a really nice person. Or I don't know. Where do you see the difference in reality to the change of approach?
So I'm still on my journey. I think I'm not that yet. I don't feel I'm there yet, but I'm still on my journey. But that's an easy one. So the traffic one's an easy one, because where's your anger coming from when you get pissed off at someone?
Fear of dying.
Okay. So, nothing happened though. Right? In other words, you're getting angry for a situation that actually nothing happened.
But it was let's say you didn't get hurt, but he ran you off the road and your car ran into a pole.
Okay, so that hasn't happened to me. And if we go deeper on that, the only reason that may be happening to you is because you've allowed it to happen to you. So we can go on a much deeper level there.
Okay.
Okay. In other words, most negative scenarios that we have experiences in our life are coming from us. And if you go dig deeper and you just go really, really deep and you're honest with yourself, you'll see that that's the case. But that's an easy one. So that wouldn't bother me at all, because I wouldn't want to get that anger, because I'd understand right away, where's that coming from? It's ego, it's entitlement. It's so many other reasons that you're getting angry. But how does it help you getting angry? It just puts you down. It takes you down.
So why is that the reaction of so many people?
Ooh. So unfortunately, a lot of people, we've all been, brought up with certain kinds of ideas, and we see how our parents react, and we react the same way. And society, we're conditioned by society that you feel entitled to get pissed off at someone, give them the finger if they cut you off. And, get ahead, I'm not a friar, ataovedalai, all these kinds of concepts, right, is what drives a person to feel entitlement, to get pissed off at someone. But really, if you go deep and you get pissed off, what kind of place are you in when you're getting pissed off at this person? You're in a pretty crappy place.
Yeah.
And do you really want to be in that crappy place? What is that doing to you? That's just bringing you down. And, we don't have enough time to discuss the idea of, energy, frequency, and vibration. But that is really key to the universe. And I think it really is key to the universe. And this jives with everything we know about Judaism too, that everything is a frequency. Everything is going to cause some sort of energetic pulse. Whether when you do a mitzvah, it creates an energetic pulse. When you get angry, you're creating another kind of energetic pulse. But here is the problem with getting angry. Okay, and I'm not perfect, and I'm not walking around like I'm one of these guys, but it's getting to an understanding of what the truth is. When you get angry, right? So Chazal say, when you get angry, a rabbi say that it's like you're oved avodah zarah, right? Kol hakoyetz kilo oved avodah zarah. If you get angry, it's like you're oved avodah zarah. Why is that? So the way to really explain that is because when you're getting angry, you no longer have an attachment to God at that point, because God is not that. God is love, God is joy, God is harmony, He is peace. He's all those things, bliss, but beauty, but He's not anger. Anger is a human thing coming from ego. Because in reality, real reality, okay, if we're in this perfect world, there's absolutely no reason to get angry. Now, we all fall to that, myself too. I still sometimes, they say if you want a real test of someone who's transcended individual and awakened person, go put them in the family structure and see how they work. Because family can be the biggest triggers. So it may not be the best starting place for someone to do, is like be in his family. And you can get triggered, but you have to understand, you first of all have to, even if you get angry, you catch yourself. It's very important to catch yourself. A lot of people lose themselves in anger. There was this one guy, Rabbi Manis Friedman, he had a great line. He goes, when you get angry, there's no room for God in your existence. You're not letting God in. It's like you've blocked Him out because you're so angry. You're so caught up in yourself with your anger, right? There's no room for anything else within that anger. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. I think what he's saying is really correct. And by the way, he's also a very advanced guy. He has a lot of very interesting insights on a Jewish level too.
I remember my dad sold some of his books, right? He's an author.
Yeah, sure. He's a very special guy. And so we were just talking about the book, Norman Vincent Peale, and where that led me to. So one of the beautiful things I learned in that book, where I call it pasuk power. And the idea was to find a pasuk that resonates with you. And you're in a state of fear.
A pasuk is like
A verse in the Torah,
as a
right?
verse in the Bible.
A verse in the Bible, right?
Right.
So we all know that the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, right? Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim. So we understand these are all holy books. They're different levels, right? The highest level is Torah, then Nevi'im, then Ksuvim, in terms of the way that, the words were used. So, and the idea being is that they're almost like magic spells, these psukim. And when you can find a pasuk that resonates with you and just repeat it all the time, because what you're really doing is you're creating this magic spell of energy around you. You're also feeling inside of you something that's different. It's going to affect you. It has to affect you because speech affects everyone. And so,
Do you have a pasuk?
I have many different psukim for different occasions. So give me an occasion you want a pasuk for.
As an inspiration or
Whatever you want, okay?
a situation?
I'll give you my favorite pasuk. I shouldn't say favorite pasuk, but for a pasuk that shaped me and I connected to on a high level. And that's in Mishlei. And I really recommend everyone take a Mishlei, sit down and start reading those psukim because you'll blow your mind in terms of the depth of insight that Shlomo had into actual real life. So one of the psukim there is Betach el Hashem b'chol libecha, which means trust in God with all your heart, or surrender to God with all your heart. And to your mind, don't rely on here. Don't rely on this logical mind, but rather surrender here with God with your heart. In other words, your intuition, your inspiration, your whatever it is should be over here and less here. Let this be your guide and not this your guide. And that's a real deep secret because we have a tendency to put a real focus and degesh and emphasis on our logical minds. Oh, they'll solve all our problems. But it's not true. It's just not true. And maybe that has to do in the Jewish world. We learn Gemara, so it's all a logical sort of, pilpulistic kind of approach. And so maybe that we use that same idea for other things, but really there has to come from here. And this is something that Shlomo, actually, interesting enough, when Shlomo asked for, when God said you could have anything you want, what do you want? And so everyone thinks Shlomo asked for wisdom. He didn't. Didn't say chachma. Okay? He said, lev shomea, a heart that listens. Shlomo, and look it up in, as my father would say, look it up. Look it up in Melachim. In the beginning of Melachim, when Shlomo says that, he goes, I want a heart that listens. Right? We know that Shlomo could connect to trees, animals, nature. How did he do that? Not from the intellectual mind. He did it.
He was on a different vibration.
Exactly. He was Lev Shomea. He connected at a certain level over here. And, I have a friend who's I'd call him a master meditator. And he always told me, he always said to me, Abba, it's always inside. Never go outside. Always go inside. And it's an important lesson. We're not taught that. But you need to go inside and feel the answers coming to you. Because your inside is your godliness. You're getting the perfect answers when you're going inside. Over here, it's all conditioned from whatever's outside, from what you've accepted from the outside. Your consciousness has been exposed to. That's how your decision process will be made, but it's not perfect. But when you're getting an answer from here, your hunch, your gut, whatever it may be, if you can connect to that, okay, then you're going to get amazing answers. And this is the shift, I think, that I went through in my life. And it's a work in progress because you're always getting to higher levels. You're always getting to higher understandings. You start to see people as they speak. Okay, I'll even give you an example of what you said to me today. You said to me, drive carefully twice. I wouldn't drive carefully. Do I need that reminder to drive carefully? So where is that driving carefully coming from?
Do I have to say?
No, you don't have to say.
But you already know.
So you know what you understand what I'm saying? So the idea behind that is that you got to go inside, and the way to go inside is through breathing and meditation. And this is not part of our society today. It's getting more and more. And what I've witnessed over the last 20 years is more and more more and more videos and people approaching this, getting exposed to it, more people wanting this stuff, open to it. I like to see more of it open in the religious world too. It's not so open in the religious world.
I agree with you, and I think that you have a very interesting approach to emunah, to faith also. And I think that the concept of as God being a loving entity and us being a loving entity and the religion being a loving entity really changes the way that you look at all of these things. Like the last conversation we had, and you said without having belief, nothing works.
Yeah.
But you explained to me that that belief and the relationship that we have with God, right, is not supposed to be one of someone who's gonna slap you every time you do something wrong and there to be punishing you or in that direction, but someone or an entity that only wants the best for you.
Unconditional love.
Unconditional love.
Yeah.
And the way to make that connection and achieve that connection is not through the way that we're used to thinking through our head and logic, but we're connecting with love also.
Yeah.
And so if Judaism, if you're changing the shift a little bit of how you see Judaism, I think that's a much more palpable approach for people in this generation, right? You're appealing more to people in this generation than the way it was in the past. And I hope that that's the way it is. I hope it's what you've come up with through all of your experience and your studying. And I would hope that that's the way that it really is, because it's a very beautiful way of looking at it. And I think it would help a lot of people to change their shift from thinking that there's a God that's always against you, that just wants to limit you and confine you, than a God that wants you to have everything,
Yeah. So would you not agree that God is all abundant?
I don't
Look
know
at the
if I'm
world.
the right person to
Okay.
ask about these
All right, we
things,
won't-
because my belief is like on the fence.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'm the best person to ask. But if you were asking me if I was you, then I would say yes, because
Okay.
God is everything.
Exactly. Lashem haaretz u'meloah, right? Hashem has
Right.
the whole universe and everything in it. So he is pure abundance, right? So that would mean and we have a piece of God inside of us, okay? Meaning we have this neshama, which is connected to God. So it means we are connected to all abundance. So that's how you have to look at it. And here's the thing. One guy who said, a guy who was also in sort of the New Age thinking that was very, very well known, also a incredible author, one of my favorites actually, is this guy Joseph Murphy, who actually started off as a Catholic. He was going to study to become a Catholic priest at some point, and then he realized, this is all not right, okay? And he ended up believing in the one God, where God is just echad, okay? It's a very interesting person, and he based a lot of stuff on it. And he had a great line where he said, the kind of God that you're going to believe in, because thought has such a force in terms of creating your reality. So if you want to believe in a God that punishes, that will be your life.
Right.
So if you think you're going to be struck down because you were Mechalel Shabbos, you know what? You may be struck down now because you've created that energy for you. But if you believe in a God of love, okay, who's abundant and loving and it just professes harmony to the world and bliss to the world and is a place of complete shalva, okay, yeah, that will be your God. Now, we could say, well, what's the real truth about God? By definition, God, if you really think about it, we don't think about taking the next breath. There's abundant air out there for us to breathe. We don't even think about it, right? Our subconscious mind feeds that on a daily basis. It works for us all the time. When you get a cut on your body, you don't need to do anything. It heals on its own. There's a lot of examples one can give to show you how God is so great. You go outside and you see the shefa, the abundance of all the plants and the trees and the fruits and the vegetables, everything growing just free. When the winter comes and there's that first rain, then you see mullein and you see all these different smachim, all these different herbs that just grow in complete abundance. And you say to yourself, whoa, wow, how great is God that he just gives us this free for nothing. Okay, then, so when you understand that on a much deeper level and you connect to that source of goodness, it's going to bring good in your life. It's going to be, it has to happen because you're connecting to that source. The problem is that we always go back here, okay? And we have to learn how to shut this down. This needs to be quieted. You need to still your mind. And really the only way to do that is, once again, through breath work and meditation.
When do we meet our mind?
It's a good question. When you're doing math problems, you're writing a letter, possibly even then you don't need your mind. It could just come from here. Often, we came here and we're speaking. I have no notes. I didn't plan anything, right? So a lot of this is just coming from me in terms of my passion, what I'm talking about, what I'm feeling. If I were to have planned it and worked it out, I have to say this at this point, I would have had it written down, I'd be using my mind. And so you ask a question, when do we need to use our mind? Not a lot. We shouldn't be using our minds too much.
Are you working with people, helping people?
I do help people. I've helped quite a few people at this point. Many people are in different stages, it's...
Help with what? What do they come to you for?
Anything. Marriage, their... finances, marriage, depression. That's a hard one. Depression is the hard one because it's hard to talk to someone who has depression because they're just in such a funk. It's really hard to bring them up. But I work on that too. I just have a lot of different people that come to me for different issues.
How do they hear about you?
They know me. They know my thing. I post every day. I update every day on my WhatsApp. They know from that. But I meet people and then they just know. And there's a saying, chavra chava itle, which means that people just talk about you. They talk about me and they put me onto it. I'm very vocal about what I do because I want to share with people that are suffering or not where they could be. They're not happy. They're not living a happy life.
What's your motivation?
My motivation is to share the secret of life. I think it's the secret of life. It's changing our thinking, changing the way we think and how to respond to situations differently. I can give you a really beautiful example is my wife had a makeup store. Okay, and what happened was because of Corona and everything, she realized she was going to have to shut it down because women aren't wearing makeup during Corona, and that's fine. And then we had a bit of a problem with our balabait of the store who, from the start, he was a bit of a problem, okay? And I felt he would be a problem, which was not a good thing, right? I should have thought differently.
I was going to say, you caused him to be
Yeah, absolutely caused it, no question. And so he sued us, okay, for 100,000 shekels, which is about like $30,000, whatever. It was frivolous, it was ridiculous lawsuit, okay? And it dragged on for 4 years, kept getting thrown out, and the guy come back, thrown out, come back, whatever. And then at one point, I realized, I go, what am I doing? I need to just surrender. And I decided I don't care about this lawsuit. It's meaningless. And I give it over to God. I give it over to him. Let him deal with this. If I owe the guy money, I'll pay him money. If I don't owe him, but I have nothing to do with this. I'm not giving him 1 ounce of energy to this. And so what happened was we ended up going to court a couple of times, but this was the final time. And just if you can avoid going to court in Israel, because it's just ridiculous. It's a banana republic. Yeah. And it's everyone bad energy. Call it bad energy, okay? I'm sitting there trying to like just keep my energy levels good, okay? But it's a rough energy there. Anyway, I was trying to send love to the judge, to the guy who's making the claims against us, to his lawyer, to my lawyer. Everyone I'm trying to send love just to keep that energy levels, okay? Anyway, So what happened was after the case, and I can tell you I had to give testimony for my wife, and I think I did a horrible job on paper. If you said, let's analyze what Abba said, I don't think I did a very good job. Like the lawyer tricked me a couple times and I wasn't as sharp as I could be. And I just said, I don't care, it doesn't matter, nothing matters, because I'm not giving my energy to anything. And then after the case, my lawyer, meaning our lawyer, comes out and he says, this judge, I don't know what's going to be because we overturned another judgment of his, and so he doesn't really like us because we made him look bad, so I don't know what he's going to do. Okay, and then this other guy who gave testimony.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Okay.
It really depends on what kind of judge you get. I'm sorry, continue.
So I said, I don't care. I don't accept it. Once again, I said, I don't accept that. And then what happened was someone who gave testimony comes out and really in a very insensitive way, because, no one wants to pay 100,000 shekels to anybody. And he comes out, oh, you know what's going to happen? They'll probably make you pay half, 50,000 shekels, because that's how it always works. They make you pay half. And right on the spot, my wife at the time said, she said that made her feel very uncomfortable. And right away I said, I don't accept any of this. I give it over to God. Nothing you say makes a difference to me. I don't care. I don't care. And what happened was, then we got the decision about a month later, and I opened it up. And I noticed when I opened up the decision how calm I was. I didn't care. I literally didn't care. And then I look and I see, we have to pay 8,000 shekels, which was rent we had never paid because we had a whole dispute with him because there was water pouring into the store. He says, you have to pay that 8,000 shekels because I have no proof that in Corona he deducted 60%. He said he deducted 40% from the price, so you got to pay this 8,000 shekels, which was nothing, right? So I look at that and I just laughed. And then what happened was the lawyer calls me afterwards and he goes, it's a miracle. I've never seen this ever in my life, that a judge would give nothing. He gave these guys nothing. And he goes, the 8,000 was just because we couldn't prove it. And it was true, we had not paid that rent. It's actually true. So in theory, we owed him that money. But this is a very good example where I didn't give any of my own power to anything outside, including my own lawyer. He's just a pawn of part of this. I sent him love and I said, you're my shliach, you're my whatever. But really at the end of the day, all decisions don't come from you. They don't come from the judge. Okay, and I have more stories like that, but I don't think we have time for that. To give you an idea is we have to learn these skill sets, implement them. And
it's work.
It's work.
It's work.
Yes, it's work. It's working on yourself.
Yeah.
It's time for everyone to work on themselves instead of telling everyone else what they think of others.
100%.
Right?
I really connect with that.
And it takes time. It's not overnight. I told you, it's a 20-year journey. Okay, it's a 20-year journey. And for me, I wanted to see that this was in Judaism too. I didn't want it to be an outside idea. And so what I've done over the last 20, it's not even 20 years, but I really put together a lot of sayings of Chazal, of our rabbis, whether it be Gemaras or it be Psukim, whatever it is that captures these ideas also in Judaism, and that they're actual real ideas in Judaism.
Are you writing a book about this?
No, I'm not yet. Not yet.
Is it in your plans?
It may be in my plans to do something like this.
I heard you wrote a book.
I did.
What book did you read? Right, sorry.
I there's a Talmudic book called Darchei HaGemara, Darchei HaTalmud, and it was a book written by Rabbi Yitzchak Konpanton from Spain in the 1300s. It's the only book ever written on essentially how to analyze Gemara. Okay, so it's a methodology of analyzing Gemara. It's the only book ever written that's out there. Now you would think, whoa, if it's the only book, every yeshiva would be learning this. How do I learn Gemara? I want to learn Gemara like the Ramban learned it or the Rashba learned it. But unfortunately, it's not a popular book because other methods have taken over. And so I was exposed to this book by my rabbi, actually Rav Ariel from the Temple Institute, and became an obsession. And I ended up doing scientific work on the book with him. I mean, he wrote 35 examples, he gave an intro, and then I worked on the actual book, finding cross-references and explaining certain parts of the book and how to apply the actual ideas in the book to learning Gemara.
Do you still learn now?
Yeah,
Every day?
every day.
You do Daf Yomi?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. I give
incredible.
Daf Yomi. I've taken a hiatus, but I was giving a Daf Yomi for many years. I've taken a brief hiatus. I'm going to start again soon, another month. But yeah, and so that was also one of the key premises of the book, actually is really interesting, and I use the word premise here for a certain reason, is in the book Rabbi Yitzchak Ponton says that don't accept anything at face value. So when you see something, question it, because the only way to truth is to question. Okay?
I like that a lot.
And the idea being is that you need to ask all kinds of questions about a position. Where's this position? Does it come from the Torah? Is it a logic? Is it Torah-based? What is it exactly? Is this true? Is this how based on what is this?
But it's also like that in life.
Yeah, but we have a tendency in Judaism and halachic Judaism to just accept and not question.
Yeah.
And and this book was don't accept any hagdama. Hagdama is essentially a premise. Don't accept premises. Okay? Question them. Where is this from? Is this true? What's the reason behind everything? Know the reasons. And he says, always see the other side of things too. So don't just say it's this, but you need to say, well, what's the other side? If it's not this, then it would be that. And if it would be that, well, would the halacha be different? Would things be different here? And why isn't it that? Why is it only this? So it's the idea of refining sort of each position to get to the ultimate truth. Mm-hmm. And one of his main ideas, which is interesting, it's a life idea, Ena emet nikar ela mitochav cho. Truth can only be ascertained by investigating the opposite. So if you want to know that this is true, I need to know, well, what's not true. And I need to see, well, why is that not true? Oh, because that's not true, therefore I know that this is truth. But you can't just say this is absolute without seeing the other sides, right? It's like light and darkness. Light, if you go outside and you light your lighter, it doesn't add value. You don't see the light of the lighter. But if you go in a dark room and then you turn on your lighter, so then suddenly you see the light because it's got a background of darkness. Yeah. Right? So you need the darkness is essentially the other positions that aren't true, but it has to be weighed against those positions.
Yeah. And that's what makes the balance also in life, right?
Yes.
Good and evil.
Absolutely.
Dark and light. You can't have good if you don't have evil. You don't know what to compare it to.
Right, there's a duality. Human existence is a duality. God is one, but a human existence is a duality. But that duality is only in our minds. There is no real evil. It's man's perception of what evil is. But that's a discussion for another time.
Yeah, we're already passing our time. But
Okay.
Abba, it was such a nice conversation, and I really love that your approach to things. It's really a breath of fresh air, especially during this tkufa.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about one specific incident. This is a method that you can apply to everything that goes on in your life, and hopefully, I'm starting to work on myself, and hopefully it'll have a ripple effect onto other things as well. And hopefully will lead to the salvation of our country and of our nation, and only good things for all of us.
Yeah. I think we need to just send love to everyone, not let our egos get in the way. If I could just finish off with this story about friends of ours who their son just went in again to Lebanon for, I think, the third or fourth time, and he's in a sayeret, so it's rough for the mom. And the mom reached out to me and she said, it's just really hard. It was a rough Shabbos before he went into Lebanon, and she's like thinking, what can I do? What can I do? And I said to her, I go, listen, you have two choices. You can worry all day that he may be getting hurt or killed, chas v'shalom, or you can know and just say, I surrender myself to God, and know that he's watching out for him. And then to also say certain psukim that will first of all, you're creating this spell through using these psukim and saying them. And I told her to say Yosha Beseter, because that's a protective kapitel Tehillim, and to say that for her son.
Which
and
Tehillim is it? Do you remember?
I think it's 90 or 91, okay? And it's a very important one because it really is talking about watching out for your child. And I said, every time a thought comes in your mind that your son is in danger or you're worried about him, I said, say the pasuk, Yivarechacha Hashem v'yishmerecha. And just keep saying that over and over again every time that comes in. And I said, know that God is watching out for him. I go, you have two choices. You could go the opposite choice, but then you're creating that reality for your son. You don't want to do that. I go, you love your son. You want him to see that he's okay. And I said, so that's why you need to focus on that aspect. And then, so she wrote me back, actually, that it's really helped her, calmed her down. Okay, I try to give her breath work, but she goes, I don't have the savlanut to sit and do it. In the middle, like 5 minutes in, I'm done. So I said, okay, do this. And she's a believer, so it was really good to deal with her on that. And she actually said to me that the group that they're on, because every chayal, the parents have a parents' WhatsApp, okay? Yeah. So the WhatsApp group that she was on, they, out of the blue, they go, let's be mafresh chala. And it's not like the group is so religious, but like, they suddenly did that, and they wanted. And why are you doing that? Why are you doing mafresh chala? Because you're doing an act where you're demonstrating to God, right? There's so much abundance out there. I know that there's more coming. I don't need to hoard this little bit. I can give it over to you, but I know there's abundance, and I want to do this mitzvah, which is unique to women. Women are supposed to do this, right? It's a special mitzvah for women.
Can you explain to everyone what the mitzvah is for people who don't know what hafreshat challah is?
Yeah, so it's when you make, you're making bread out of dough, of your own dough. You need to take off 1/24th, or depending really on it. So you take off a bit, okay, for it, and you separate. You're meant to give it to the Kohen. We don't do that today because we're not in a state of ritual purity. But instead today we actually burn it. But it is a mitzvah that, again, like truma, like maaser, like all these things that we take off and give presents to the Kohen or the mikdash, to the temple. So this is one of those mitzvot. And it's been sort of assigned to women, even though men can do it too. And the mitzvah is not unique to women, but women have taken upon themselves. And it seems to be a special skula, special mystical, spiritual energy that is created on a higher level by women than by men. And what's really interesting of the hafrashat chala is, if you guys remember in the beginning of the war, there was one of the chatufim, this girl, who they filmed the whole going on in her apartment, of her parents' apartment, with the grandmother. And the grandmother at one point said, she goes, I don't know why this has happened, but I love you, God. I love you, Hashem. And at the time they're doing challah. And out of this crazy miracle, they suddenly found this girl, like her captors left or were killed, and she's just out there, and she's able to contact Tzahal, and they picked her up, and she was rescued. And I can't help but believe that this grandmother was instrumental through her surrender to God of bringing this energy, this incredible, miraculous energy back to freeing her granddaughter. I just can't help think that, because we've gone all over the world begging and forcing and pushing and killing even the Gazans, right, all day, and it doesn't help. But this one grandmother sits there and tells God how much she loves him. In the heart of this like crazy, you could think a person could lose religion over this, right?
100%.
And she went the opposite. She went full surrender. There's something big about that. So surrender is something that we have to learn how to do too. Okay? It's like jumping into the water for the first time, right?
Yeah.
Sink or swim kind of thing. And I just thought that was magical, actually. And I will never forget it, because I remember the grandmother talking, and they filmed her, and it was like, oh my God, like how could this not? I even remember thinking at the time, this is going to do something. I just felt it's going to do something. I didn't know what. I didn't realize it was such a miracle that this girl and nothing had happened to her.
I started to adapt that as well, that whole issue of surrendering. I feel like there's a lot of times where I was just running into walls and just trying, and it was just not going anywhere. And I'm like, you know what? Take over. Right. I've done my hishtadlut. I've done the maximum that I can do. The rest is not in my hands, obviously. and I give it over, and it's a surrendering feeling. It makes you feel so much more relaxed. That
Yes.
heaviness is off of your shoulders.
Yes.
That unnecessary heaviness, and I think that it's something that would help a lot of people. I do it especially with this podcast because apparently there's so many rules about how to post things, when to post things, all the different social media. And, it's like I've had social media, but I didn't know all these different rules about things. And it's not for me. I can't live up to it. I mean, to a certain degree, yes, of course, I want people to listen to this podcast. I really believe in it. But I need to stay within my capabilities, and I can try to do things as much as I can, but I believe in karma, and I believe that the truth always wins. And when you're the most authentic, that you can't beat it.
I would
You
agree
can't
with you.
beat it.
I think effortlessness and path of the least resistance is the way to go.
Right.
And I think I've found myself when I'm trying to be too sholet, when I'm trying to be control, when you try and be too controlling of your situation, it never works out well. But when you let go and you're loose and you're more calm and you're easygoing about it, it flows.
How do you apply this method to business, to your work, let's say? You want to try to get a new client, or you're worried, about something in your work. You can't just surrender because it's work. You need to contact your clients. You need to make an effort. You can't just sit there and be like, okay, they'll invest in me no matter what I do, so I don't need to try to do anything or convince them or whatever. So how do you channel that into your work?
It depends really on how deep you want to go, but in theory, you can manifest that by doing nothing on a much deeper level. You have to be on a higher level to do that, but you definitely can manifest doing absolutely nothing. I know people are going to think I'm nuts, but that is the truth, okay?
What
Now,
do you mean not doing anything? You don't need to work, you don't need to manage portfolios, you don't
nothing,
need to do anything.
zero.
Okay.
That's the deepest, okay? We're not going to go there. Why do we need to do something?
That's weird. Yeah.
Yes, that's fine. But why do we need to do something? Because by doing something, our mind now accepts the possibility of being successful. So when we're actually doing something active and taking action, right? It says, oh, I've taken action now. In my mind, I'm thinking, I've now created the possibility, the kli, the vessel, for now something good to happen. Okay? But that's not true. On a much deeper level, it's not true. But that helps us. The problem with overkill, what are you doing when you're overkilling? You're trying to control the situation. What you're doing is you're demonstrating that you have no faith and that you just got to keep working more and more and more. And it creates a form of resistance. Okay? And that resistance causes you to fail. So you have to have a balance. For the beginners, of course, you have to have a balance of how much work do you put in and how much work do you not put in? And you have to have that balance and find that balance. But really, it's a training of your mind and understanding that you need to feed this, whatever you want to do, that I am successful. It is flowing to me. And remember, when you put the God component in, you don't dictate to God how this should be done. So God, it could be done in multiple different ways. You have a limited ability even to understand how this can be done and how you will be successful. It's limited because you don't know. So what's more important is the attitude you have going in. This will be, what do you want? You want your podcast to be successful, right? So that means now want is a future. So you don't really want something for the future. You want it now. So you're saying I know this is an amazing broadcast. I know this is an amazing podcast, And I know people want this, and I'm doing this for the good of the people. And therefore, there's no way that this won't be successful. And I trust that my podcast will be extremely successful and people are going to love it because I'm giving them something. I'm serving the people in a certain way. That's the approach you need to take. Now, you are doing this podcast because you want to do it. You have a passion to do it. You have a desire to do it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so because you have all those, so why should it not be successful? The only reason this will not be successful is over here. It's the only, your doubts. Your doubts. Oh, I don't know, I don't this, that. That's your enemy. Okay, and just like we have enemies surround us in Israel, that's your internal enemy that you need to fight daily.
That negative voice.
Daily, you got to fight them.
The negative voice.
Yeah, fight it daily.
All right, I'm fighting it daily. Abba Horowitz, amazing guest.
Thank you.
Amazing conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
No worries.
And thank you everyone for listening. Come back soon.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of The Dayna Show. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to the podcast, like and share with your friends on social media, and rate us 5 stars. Don't forget to tune in next week, and we'll see you then.